For anybody that doesn't know, my name is Rumya. I'm the Director of Environmental Science for the Key Biscayne Community Foundation, and I run their Citizen Science program. We try to have lectures every third Thursday of the month, as much as possible. It doesn't always work out, but we at least have some kind of event every month. More recently, we've been doing mangrove cleanups, which we're going to talk about today. For the last few months, we have 2 more coming up. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. Normally, I would hand it off to the lecturer, but I'm actually going to start out with a quick presentation just about mangroves and mangrove ecology. And then I will show a TED Talk that was done by Manny recently. And then we'll go into, Manny will speak about Fill-A-Bag and our mangrove cleanups and go into that. So, and then we'll have our Q&A at the same time at the end. We are a barrier island. We have a lot of mangroves here, and so they are a very integral part of our ecosystem and for protection and other things for our island. Simply, mangroves, there are about 80 different species throughout the world. There are white, black, and red mangroves. We have all 3 here on the Key. Red mangroves are the ones that are the best known, and that's what I have pictures of here. They have what's called prop roots, and that's what all of these like tangly roots are that you find growing into the water. Red mangroves in South Florida tend to outcompete white mangroves and black mangroves on the actual coastline. They can live in salt water more efficiently than black mangroves and white mangroves, so that's why you always see them right on the edge of the water. We tend to have, I believe it goes red mangroves along the edge. Behind that you'll have white mangroves, and behind that is black, I believe. That varies with species around the world. Sometimes in other parts of the world you might have the white mangroves that are better at living in salt water, or the black mangroves. But here in Florida, that's kind of the order you tend to see them. And with these kinds of roots here that you find in Florida, their structure is what is most important for us. They play a few very vital roles in the local ecosystem and for our for human use, so to speak. One of the most important roles they play is as a nursery ground for different types of fish and other organisms that live in the ocean. And not just as a nursery, but also just hiding places for all kinds of different animals. Obviously that is a huge queen conch. It's not a baby, but it's living in the mangroves, living its best life, having fun. You have a lot of little tiny fish like minnows that will hide in the mangroves. They're safe there because they can't be chased by large predators. But then you do have a lot of juvenile fish that can swim up in and around the mangrove roots, and it's a really good nursery ground for them to hide and grow until they're big enough to join the other adults. A lot of times what you'll find is not just baby fish. You'll find young juvenile sharks, sometimes baby rays, all kinds of different animals, shrimp, lobsters, so many different things that live there. You'll also find a lot of reef fish. So you see the adults of the reef fish out on the reef, like, living among the coral and everything else. They spawn in the open ocean most of the time, but their larvae and their juveniles will grow up in the mangroves, because mangroves and coral reefs are very, very closely linked. They're separate, considered sort of separate ecosystems, but they're very closely linked, not just because of proximity, but also just because they have these shared sort of parts of the life history of the different animals that live in both. So what you'll have, because of this type of sort of linked ecosystem that reefs and mangroves have, and that goes beyond those 2 also, but I'm just talking about those 2 right now because they're so closely linked. If you have some kind of problem in one of them, that can have a cascading effect into the other. If you cut down a mangrove stand, that can then affect the nearby reefs that required that mangrove stand to raise their young or to live in for various reasons. And if you have an area where the reef has been destroyed, that can also then affect the mangrove stands that may be nearby that are require the organisms that live on that reef to use them as a home. They get a lot of nutrients, obviously, from those animals and other things. So these are just some other pictures of fish, and there's a lionfish. Hopefully that's not from Florida. But you can see they live in and among the mangrove roots. So another very important function of mangroves is protection against storm surge. And also, I only put storm surge protection at the top, but also erosion. And that isn't necessarily done by storm surge. You can also have erosion just naturally, slowly. storm surge can have a very huge and immediate effect on erosion. But both of those things, we can consider them separately. When you have huge waves like this coming in because of, say you have a big old hurricane like that coming and like hitting the side of Florida, these kinds of waves are obviously extremely destructive. But what you have with mangroves is they have the ability to temper the storm surge, temper the wave energy that's coming in. They also, because they can do this, they slow the flow of water, not just with waves, but just regular high and low tide. And so any sediment that's being held in the water will, as the water slows, it drops out and falls, and basically it can accrete land by doing that. So you have all the sediment that will fall out of the water column as the water slows down, and it builds up and creates land. And so what you have is basically towards the edge where the water starts slowing down as it hits the roots, you start building up more and more land here. And then these young mangroves will start colonizing that area. And the high tide might be this high, and it'll go over them, but they can live like that for a few hours. That's not going to kill them. And see, there's a mangrove propagule, which is like basically a seed for a red mangrove. And that will float in here and plant itself, and they'll just keep growing outwards like that. And this doesn't happen everywhere, but it has been shown to happen in a lot of areas. And as they do that, they're basically building out land. And that's one of the reasons that they're very, very important. So when you remove that, you've now opened that area to erosion much, much more quickly than it would be naturally. And then when we're talking about wave energy, I already sort of mentioned this, but you have this huge wave coming in, and it hits all of these obstacles as it's coming in. And that slows the wave energy and protects whatever is inland here. It can be buildings, it can be other types of forests, it can be the animals that live there, whatever it is. And this wave energy is tempered very heavily by these mangroves, and so you don't have as much destruction there. There have been a lot of studies, tons and tons of studies that have shown areas where mangroves have been removed versus mangroves that have been left alone and allowed to grow. And that area gets hit with wave energy from storms or a tsunami even, and those areas show significantly less damage, depending on the type of wave, than the areas where the mangroves have been destroyed. And this is just a couple little videos that I made just to kind of show the channels that you find in the mangroves. I've had a few conversations with people that think that these channels are man-made, and they're not. These channels happen naturally. The mangroves, they don't necessarily grow in a straight line as they're accreting or as they're finding places to start, for the young propagules to start growing. And they naturally just make channels like this. What these do are create areas of basically safe haven for larger animals during storms and things like that. They can come into these channels and they have a safe place to hide because now they're protected by wave energy that's coming in. When I was doing research in Belize, I found that the locals, who are very, very protective of their reefs and their mangroves, whenever there was a big hurricane or a huge storm coming, they would take their boats and tie them up in the mangrove channels because they know that's one of the safest places for their boats to be, because the mangroves will basically protect them. And they'll just live on their boat for a couple days until the storm has passed, and then they'll bring it back out. And so this is actually just a natural phenomenon, and it's very useful for both the flora and fauna that live there and for people. So that's my quick spiel about mangroves. Now we're going to get into Manny's TED Talk. He's going to talk about Fill-A-Bag, and then once that's over, we'll have Manny himself talk to you about what we're doing, and you can ask him any questions you want.
Are you one of those weirdos who picks up trash at the beach? I know I've seen a few of you out there. It began innocently enough for me. Although I spent many days on the beach over the course of my life, it wasn't until a few years ago that I got into the habit of taking these long strolls down the shoreline. And it was occasionally when I would come across a large piece of marine debris that had washed ashore, a big ball of trap rope, barnacle-encrusted chunks of styrofoam. So I'd pick it up, take it to the waste bin, throw it away, and finish my stroll. And over time, I began to find more and more pieces of debris washing in. Not just big ones, small items, bottle caps, strange items, toothbrushes, tiny items, microplastics, and nurdles. So I'd scoop up what I could in my hands, walk up and down to the trash can, back and forth, until ultimately I wasn't taking long walks anymore. I was doing zigzagging beach cleanups. And I remember this particularly trashy period of time. The winds were blowing in hard from the east, and they would bring in big patches of sargassum seaweed. And embedded in that weed, there was a ton of debris, and much of it coming from all corners of the globe, judging from the labels. One day I looked out and I saw a white plastic bag floating in the debris, in the seaweed. And I went over and picked it up, and at that moment the skies opened and the trash god spoke to me. Find it, fill it. So I did. And they continued, bring a bag with you when you go to the beach. So I began to. Every day before going on my walk, I'd reach under my sink and pull out one of dozens of plastic grocery bags that was there. They're not there anymore. Take it to the beach, I'd fill it, take a picture, share it up on my chats and socials and networks, hashtag fill a bag. I wanted to call attention to what I saw as a real problem. One that somehow, despite the fact that I lived on an island, I hadn't noticed. Pretty soon I started getting pictures back from friends and family and strangers from around the world with their hashtag fill a bag pictures. And while there was this incredible sense of outrage, there was also this underlying we feeling. Hey, we see it too. Hey, we need to do something about this. Every now and then, of course, I would forget to bring my bag, and you remember what the trash god said, all together, find it, fill it! A cup, a shoe, even a helmet one time. And I thought, what if more people just brought a bag with them when they went to the beach? That's when I had an idea. Taking a page from the dog poop station playbook, I imagined a fill-a-bag station, a place where when you got to the beach, you can get a bag and turn an ordinary walk into a meaningful cleanup. Well, it was a great idea, but frankly, I didn't have any bandwidth to take on any more NIPA. You know what NIPA is, right? Non-income producing activity. If you know, you know. So I just kept doing my thing. Those bags under my sink were gone. They'd been replaced by 5 reusable bags, and instead I'd carry a bucket, fill that, take a picture, share it up, hype up others who shared pictures with me. And pretty soon I began to meet the most remarkable people from across the world. Who ever thought I'd be bonding with someone over beach trash? A couple of years later, I was at a Grateful Dead tribute show, and I met Dave Dogler and Dara Schoenwald, and little did I know that that encounter would change my life. They were sitting behind a table that read volunteercleanup.org. Volunteercleanup.org. I was familiar with this organization. It was a website where if you wanted to host or organize a cleanup, you could post it there. Or if you wanted to find one, you could search for one in your area and register and join up. So I was like, wait a second. These guys like the Grateful Dead, and they pick up beach trash? We need to start hanging out. So we did. And one day we were paddleboarding in the mangroves, doing a cleanup, of course, and I shared my idea for a fill-a-bag station with Dave, and he said, Manny, you need to submit that idea to the Miami Foundation Public Space Challenge STAT. The Public Space Challenge is a competition which invites ordinary citizens to submit ideas to activate a public space, to improve a space for the benefit of more, for the neighborhood, for the community. Dave and Darren knew about it because their idea had won in 2015 to install water refill stations in their Miami Beach neighborhood to mitigate the impact of single-use plastic water bottles and promote the use of reusables and refillables. So with Dave and Darren's guidance and the help of a couple of friends, we submitted our idea to the Public Space Challenge in January of 2018. Then we got to work. We were going to do this, NIPA notwithstanding. It was happening. So we were all set to go in front of our village council for the rubber stamp approval for the first fill-a-bag station right here in Key Biscayne when I received a call from the Miami Foundation. Manny, this is Josh from the Public Space Challenge. Great news, fill-a-bag's been named as a finalist for this year's competition. I'd like to ask you for a favor, please. Wow, Josh, that's amazing. Thank you so much. Of course, what can I do for you? Manny, I want to come down and to your fill-a-bag station. I want to come down to your fill-a-bag station and interview you and see if we might be able to use that for a promo for the next phase of the competition. That sounds great. When would you like to come? We can meet at the beach park. How about 4 o'clock? I was like, today? How about 4:30? You got it. I'll see you there. I grabbed the fill-a-bag prototype that we had built, grabbed the post sticker that we had borrowed luckily the day before, got to the beach, put it in the ground, and had a great interview with Josh. And later that year, in October 2018, fill-a-bag was named as one of 20 winners for the Public Space Challenge. We received a small grant, which we were able to transfer over to our local community foundation, the Key Biscayne Community Foundation, which continues to be our partner and collaborator to this day. Our goal the first year was to activate 5 fill-a-bag stations in the Miami area. By April, we had exceeded that with 8. And by the end of 2019, there were 20 fill-a-bag stations across the state of Florida. But what is it about beach cleanups that's so captivating, so transformational? I know what it is for me. It's a lot of things. A welcoming and inclusive atmosphere, being driven by a common sense of purpose, working together towards a greater good, spending time outside, familiar places with familiar faces, creating deeper and more meaningful connections. It's no wonder that many of these are the attributes often used to describe community. The National Institute of Health studies indicate that people of all ages, races, genders, and backgrounds benefit from the connections they make with each other and the awareness they generate for the environment when they participate in eco-activism. Cleanups are a perfect gateway eco-activity, accessible to anyone, anywhere, anytime. Immediately, you become part of this global community, and at a more personal level, you begin to generate lifestyle awareness, reflection on your own choices, and often leading to changes in behavior. Your thing may not be doing beach cleanups, so don't worry, it's okay if it is. Maybe it's carrying a refillable water bottle, or reusable bags to the store, or simply refusing single-use plastic. It's going to be something. Fill-a-Bag was designed upon the MVP model, minimum viable product. We're going to put something out there with instructions that a 4-year-old could interpret and see what would happen next. How it resonated and impacted the individual and iterated and evolved with the community would be dependent on their experiences, their resources, their creativity. Take Rionda Zerkova, a high school student who attended her first cleanup in 2020 and instantly became part of the litter picking community here in South Florida. One day she raised her hand and asked how she could bring Fill-A-Bag to her town. So with limited guidance, Rionda was able to navigate the approval process and soon activated 3 Fill-A-Bag stations on the shores of Sunny Isles Beach. She also has her own organization called Sunny Isles Beach Cleanup, which hosts a weekly cleanup every Sunday, and to date has engaged over 1,000 volunteers from her tightly knit community. Or the Burgess family, expats living on the South Shore of Boston. They started a campaign in 2020 called Just One Bag 2020. They were inviting litter pickers from around the world to join them in removing 2,020 bags of trash from the streets, neighborhoods, and waterways. They blew it away by about 20,000 bags, and they also activated a Fill-A-Bag station on the shore of Cohasset, Massachusetts, where they continue to inspire their growing community and people from around the world. Or Holly and Lily Thorpe, middle school students from right here in Key Biscayne. They started taking Fill-A-Bag walks, and instead of throwing their trash away, they kept it and turned it into trash art. One day we were at the farmer's market and we find these KB Beach Buddies that they're selling. This one, the one with the W for the weirdos, that's the Fill-A-Bag one. They were raising money for Fill-A-Bag. We didn't even know who they were. We know now. Recently they activated 2 Fill-A-Bag stations along the living shoreline of their school, and free periods have never been the same at Mast Academy. But the email I received in 2021. Hello, my name is Atlas Hamoud. I'm from Toronto, Canada. I was recently in Key Biscayne. I took a Fill-A-Bag walk, and I'd love to bring this initiative to Newport, Rhode Island, where my family has a summer home. Sounds great, Mr. Hamoud. I'd be happy to provide you with all the materials, guidance, funding, everything you need to make it happen. Can you join me for a 40-minute Zoom chat? 40-minute Zoom chat sounds great, he wrote back. Let me know what time works. Does it matter that I'm only 11? The future is bright. To date, there are 48 Fill-A-Bag stations across 5 states, with 2 more set to be activated in the Philippines next month. Here are some of my local heroes. Initiatives born and raised right here within 10 miles of where we're sitting tonight, led by passionate individuals and groups that provide eco-engagement activities for corporate groups, friend and family pods, social clubs, school communities, validating ways for them to build awareness and build capacity within their communities, opening that gateway towards awareness. Refill, refuse, reuse, reduce, rethink your choices. Since 2018, these organizations in Fill-A-Bag combined have held over 850 beach and mangrove cleanups, engaging over 35,000 volunteers of all ages, and removing over 200,000 pounds of trash from the beaches, mangroves, and waterways. That's like a Boeing 757. We even have our own hype man down here. Local 10 journalist and anchorman Louis Aguirre. I went to middle school with Louis, and we hadn't spoken in about 40 years, but I called him one day in 2019. I said, Louis, let me reintroduce myself and tell you a little bit about some of these great organizations down here. I wonder if you might be able to use your platform to help us in our campaign to raise awareness. Well, Louis immediately admitted to being one of those weirdos who picks up trash and accepted an invitation to join us right here in the mangroves by the ski hole for a cleanup in 2019. After that, he began doing stories on the environment and ultimately created his own brand, a weekly series on Local 10 News called Don't Trash Our Treasure, which highlights the good, the bad, and the ugly of what's happening right here in our Biscayne Bay habitat. Judging from his hardware, it's been a success. Last weekend, I was sitting at the beach with some friends enjoying a nice cold beverage, looking out at the horizon for diving birds or breaching wildlife or debris floating in. When I noticed a gentleman wading into the water, and I recognized the body language, he was looking down, and he hiked up his sleeves and reached in and pulled out a sheet of shredded plastic. I excused myself from the group. I grabbed a fill-a-bag bucket and walked down there to the shoreline to hear him complaining, and he was angry. He was talking out loud. His wife was within earshot on the beach, and, how can this be? What is this? This is insane. Where's this coming from? Somebody needs to do something. I extended my hand and introduced myself, and I said, we are. And offering him the bucket, I asked, won't you please join us? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Manny, were those people that had the initial organization, the guy and the woman that had the volunteer cleanup?
Yeah.
They're from Miami?
Yes. Yeah. David Dara.
Project to try to trace where this garbage comes, like say for Key Biscayne, where is it mostly comes from? What's the origin of this garbage?
That's a good question. Studies show that 80% of marine debris originates from inland sources. So it could come from, right from points inland, whether it's points inland in our own community here in South Florida, or points inland that lead to a river, and the river shoots it out, out of some delta in Nicaragua. Or what's most surprising is that it doesn't necessarily come from cruise ships or people throwing trash overboard on a boat, although that does happen as well. So.
The reason I'm asking is that I spent a lot of time on the beach, and we had this couple of storms, and after one of the storms,
Yeah.
we found that voodoo statue, wooden voodoo statue. Obviously, it came from somewhere in Haiti or Cuba or something like that. I actually traced by the look of the statue what it was, and it turns out to be a statue of Santeria god called Obatala, but that's a different story. So if it came so far away from Cuba or Haiti, probably we get a lot of trash from them also.
We absolutely get a lot of trash from the Caribbean islands, and islands like Cuba and Haiti. The Gulf Stream flows north, so once the trash gets out there, it pushes up this way. One common thing that we find on the beach, you may have seen them before, they're these little yellow tubes, like these yellow plastic tubes. They say vinagre, or they also have white ones, cloro, which do come from Haiti and from the Dominican Republic, and we find those all the time. So, yeah, I've seen you out there before. Absolutely.
I also have another question about this garbage. There's so much garbage floating in the ocean for so long. Do we have some kind of special microevolution of species because of this garbage as a research project? But no, a couple of microevolution.
Yeah, I think, Leanne, you may have spoken to that one time about traces of plastic being found in, is that what you're referring to?
Like, is the wildlife exalted somehow?
Oh, right, yeah. So has there been, is wildlife adapting to the marine debris issue?
I would say it has not adapted to
Yeah.
marine debris such as plastic because the timeline is too short. But marine plastic can, as it degrades, goes so small that it doesn't need marine animals. It's found in some contents, and it can go so small that it can fit in where like hormones fit in. So it can mess up their metabolism and their hormones.
Yeah, I've seen instances where birds pick up trash and bring it up to, to put into their nests and to help build their nests. I've seen instances of that right here on the Key in some osprey nests. Yeah, so. Anyway, well, thanks for the questions. I wanted to talk a little bit about how Fill-A-Bags continue to iterate and how, as I may have mentioned before, we're kind of just making it up as we go along because this idea of a gateway eco-activities is one that resonates at a personal level and at a community level. So the best thing for me throughout this entire experience since we started Fill-A-Bag has been the opportunity to collaborate with like-minded individuals and finding other organizations that aren't even organizations yet. They're just individuals who have ideas and come together, and we come together and we really are able to produce some incredible moments and activities and experiences. And most recently, we began working with the Citizen Scientist Project and the Miami EcoAdventures, which is a local touring operation which gives sort of backcountry tours and experiences to groups and organizations and schools here in the South Florida area in Miami. And Rumya applied for a grant through FIND. FIND is an organization. FIND is an acronym. It stands for Florida Inland Navigation District. And so it's basically an organization that is responsible for creating, funding, and marking channels and markers within the Biscayne Bay community. Biscayne Bay is huge. So we earned a small grant from them, and our charge was simple. Conduct 5 bay cleanups, 1 per month from September through January. So a bay cleanup is not a beach cleanup. A bay cleanup is, what do we find in the bay? The bay waterfront are basically mangroves, right? Mangroves and breakwaters. So we began on International Coastal Cleanup Day by organizing our first cleanup, which was over at the Crandon Bayside, right out of where the Crandon ramp is, the Crandon Marina. And along the golf course, we deployed, we were probably 80 people, and we deployed paddleboards, kayaks, and had support vessels, little skiff boats who would come, and we divided that area and got right in there. And the stuff that we found, the stuff that we pull out has been remarkable. We'll share some pictures here in a second. We also did one at the Bear Cut Preserve, which is just under the Bear Cut Bridge. You know that little beach there where people like to go and raft up and hang out? Right up to the fossilized reef, that area, which I know you've probably biked to several times. You know the area of the fossilized reef. So all, west of there, we did a great cleanup there. And, then we had the third cleanup was at the Crandon Marina. Yeah, the same area. Yeah, the first one went farther out west. But and so in just 3 out of our 5 cleanups so far, I didn't even realize we've collected and removed over 2,000 pounds of debris from the mangroves. 2,000 pounds. And we're not finished yet. So we have our next one coming up, and I'd like to invite everybody here tonight and everyone out there in Zoom land, if you're interested. We will be having a sign up and a registration for our next cleanup, which is going to be at the West Point Preserve, which is also known as the Ski Hole, just behind the Presbyterian Church and the Yacht Club. You know that stretch of mangroves back there? We're going to do a cleanup back there on the week after next on December 29th. So if you're feeling sporty and you want to get on a paddleboard or a kayak, or if you're maybe not feeling as sporty and you'd prefer to maybe be a support on a boat, if that area is shaped like this, what we'll do is we'll mark off sectors and deploy pods of paddleboards and kayaks to each sector so that they can get into those mangroves and really, really get in there. And then what we'll do is we'll assign a boat to each of those sectors so that they can act as support vessels to help remove the trash off the paddleboards. Oh, I know, absolutely. So, and if you don't have a paddleboard or a kayak, we have some loaners, and the one rule we have is you can't say no because you don't have a paddleboard. We got you on that, all right? So, I don't know if we have some pictures coming up here.
So everybody knows, it's the 29th.
It's a Thursday.
Yeah.
And it's between Christmas and New Year's, so it's hopefully a downtime and should be a beautiful experience. Yeah, these are some pictures from the ski hole back there. As you can see, dogs are welcome always. But you know, look at some of these ropes and nets, giant nets that are pulled up. This is a big, giant sheet of plastic that was all fouled up in the mangroves. You know, I don't know if we can flip through these a little bit. Yeah. So one of the nice things that we have, here's a picture of a couple of our interns. One of the things that we do at Fill-A-Bag is we invite local area high school students to intern and be part of our initiative and to become part of the initiative so that they can start creating their own stories as they're looking to the next phase of their life of going to the university or college or work or whatever it might be. Today, one of our interns was accepted to NYU, so we're really proud of her. This is at the, can you guess where this was? I mean, the finds, the things that we find back there, you wouldn't even believe it, you know? This is a driver that was right along the perimeter of the golf course over there by Sundays.
I can imagine how that got there.
Yeah, right. I imagine some guy shanks one. He's like a scene right out of Caddyshack. You remember when he takes the club and just chucks it, and he hit some lady, I think, with that. I think most of this trash is so what's the word? Contaminated, that it's beyond repair, right? So unfortunately, it's going to the landfill. It's going to the landfill. But occasionally, you know, we find groups that want to find that, collect ropes. This is a sign that was part of the ramp over there at Crandon that had, yeah, we gave it back, so they can use that again. This was a giant raft that we found with, you know, you could see what's on the bottom here. That's styrofoam. Did anyone see the Cuban raft that washed up the other day, made out of styrofoam? Just, yeah, they're washing up every day, or every month rather. Some amazing signs. I really regret not keeping that danger shoal sign. That's a treasure. But what you can see from this image is how it's an event for everybody, ages 5 to 75. You know, it's the great thing about these experiences is that they're multi-generational. Yes.
What is it that appeals to you about the danger shoal sign?
The danger shoal sign, I mean, that is, I don't know. I think that's just super cool. It's, you know, that's. Oh, I think it's from here. It's from around here, and I think it would be interesting for our sponsors, to know that we're finding, you know, some of their signs out there. This is a pretty cool shot of. I mean, look at the size of that rope. You don't even see that when you're paddleboarding by the mangroves or walking around there. You don't see the trash until. I always tell people, just get in there. Once you get in there. And it's almost like going to church. You know, inside those mangroves, it's just spectacular. Find one thing, let your eyes acclimate, and you'll start seeing more. That's like a $30 bill right there, that buoy. So somebody will repurpose that and use it. Found a bucket. We always make sure that we provide a comprehensive orientation as we set out. What's the number one priority for us? Safety. Safety, because. I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to say the croc word. I know they're out there. So I haven't seen one yet. Yeah, probably until you step on them. So I will say that I've been out there about 10,000 times, so I'm due. It's going to happen soon. I just, you know, hope it's okay. Occasionally there are injuries. Can anyone spot the injured person in this picture? It's the kid standing in the bucket of ice because he jumped off the boat and landed. He landed on a jellyfish, and so he got like some serious stings. But he's smiling because he won a fill-a-bag hat for you know, anyone who's injured. We had a little bit of like a raffle at the end, and so he got a hat. Yeah, I don't know if they're Portuguese man o' war. They were the other ones. Yeah, I don't know if it was a Portuguese man o' war. There were those round ones. They're like.
Yeah, no, he got hit by something else. It was,
Yeah.
That would have been much more painful.
Yeah.
But we do get those.
You got wrapped on it? Bad. Oh, yeah. Paralyzing. Yeah. Can anyone see what's over here on the right? Yeah, it looks like a little rope, but it's almost hard to see, right? I mean, how much rope is in there? Well, we're going to see here in a second. That's okay. This shows the cooperative element, and the collaborative element of the paddleboard, the kayaks, paddleboard, and the boats that are right there with those little skiff boats that are invaluable in terms of support. Beautiful images inside there. If you go back one shot, this picture of Teo Queenie here, you know, inside those mangroves. He's taken some pictures in there. It's just, I get goosebumps even just looking at it. This is an old shipwreck that's back there. Who knows how long it's been back there? This is back in the ski hole. This is you know, we find these giant ropes. That's a thick rope. That's like one of those cruise ship ropes, just fouled up and becoming part of the environment.
Those are so common because people will come up to mangroves and tie themselves to the roots so that they can hang out there. And then they're too lazy to untie their rope and they just cut it off. So we find ropes like that tied on the mangrove. I spent like 15 minutes cutting one off to wrap around like 25 times. And yeah, there's so many of those.
Yeah. All right. This is part of that massive rope that came out that we pulled out. And again, here's the J.P. Portela and his family, who are old-time Key Biscayner's, and his crew. His kids, you know how many cleanups his kids have been to already? I mean, so many. You know, I get pictures from random people and their kids all over the world. And you know, we had to bring this thing in. This is, you know, celebrating a little bit, but the only way to get that thing out of the water was we had to lift it with the crane at the yacht club. 900 pounds of rope. And if you see this rope, you'll see it's not just rope. There's like a plastic jug there, you see? And it's just all kinds of stuff fouled up in there. And that's not just one rope. That's dozens of ropes probably tangled up. No, this was a cleanup that we did in the mangroves behind the yacht club. So this was an event that we did for the yacht club, where for the member experience, we organized the cleanup and brought 100 people out there, from kids to adults. Yeah. Some more beautiful shots of the mangroves in there, and the little channels that Rumya was sharing. Here's just the group as we're getting ready to head out. The kids absolutely love it. This is the most fun for them. It's like nature's jungle gym, you know. And they get out there and they realize right away that they have to work together. They have to collaborate. They have to cooperate with each other. And it's just, it's unforgettable. These kids are never going to forget this. They're never going to forget.
One of the reasons we chose to do mangroves is we were focusing on neglected areas that don't get cleaned very often. You know, we have beach cleanups all the time. We have inland cleanups all the time. And the mangroves are so hard to get to and to get into. And so that was one of the reasons that, and just by virtue of their roots, they collect a lot of garbage. And this clearly shows, like, it's hard to walk through there, but the kids have fun doing it, which is great. But this is why adults never want to do it, because it's really difficult sometimes.
There's something for everyone out there. Yeah. You know, even if you want to sit on the boat and help pick the stuff up, that's fine. These guys, this is Portela. This is, anybody know what that is right there? What do you think that is?
What?
It has a number 16 on it. It's a seat back. I'm thinking it's from the Marine Stadium. It has to be from the Marine Stadium. And so this is one of those sort of treasures that you find out there, like the shoal sign. And so I put that, when we came in, I put that in a pile with my stuff by my golf cart. And when I came back, I couldn't find it. some kid had grabbed it thinking that he was going to make a seat at his house. And so I went, I found out who the kid was. So I showed up at his house. I knew the family. And I asked his mom, I said, Loudy, where's, I'm looking for the seat. And she's like, oh, I threw it away. Yeah, so I went down to the landfill and I got it. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't do that. But I would have kept it. I would have kept it. These are just, look, I mean, what a spot, huh?
That's West Point.
Yeah, that's West Point, exactly. So this is where we're going to go on the 29th, if anyone would like to join us.
This is one of the great things about these cleanups is that, the fact that, you're making an impact and removing all this trash, you get a really, really great chance to just get out into the water and see the mangroves and see the animal life that lives there and how interesting and unique they are.
Yeah.
I know that.
They have that point, they have this, almost every week, they have people kind of on the boat and they have a rock and roll.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
You know who they are?
Maybe. Do they bother you?
Well, they make a lot of noise.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, you mean the wrapped up boat? You mean a band on there?
They park in there, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And they have a live rock and roll band on front of the boat.
Oh, yeah.
And they make so much noise. I tried to tell you to get it.
Yeah. I'll say something and I'll let him know. So this is just a, I love this. This is a great picture of just, the resiliency of the mangroves. It's really remarkable. This is you could tell this is late afternoon right here. So absolutely, you mentioned animals, the wildlife encounters. And I know that you're on the beach all the time and you are also out there and you posted a great video of the manatees the other day. And the wildlife encounters, if you just, it wasn't really until I started picking up trash on the beach that I became so in tune with the environment and recognizing and hearing the osprey before I see him, and watching him. And every day, they're up there at Crandon every day, and you see them, and they almost have names, and you see them dive and catch their fish. Right. The manatees are all around now. If you walk on the beach now and you see, a big doo-doo, like a big giant doo-doo. It looks like a Great Dane was out there and pooped, And so, if you really want to drive people nuts and light up the chats, take a picture of a doo-doo on the beach and put it in the chats, and people are going to start going crazy. Oh, there are no dogs on the beach, and, oh, there's the sewage leak and all this. I'm like, and then if you really want to drive them nuts, you pick it up and you kind of squish it, like that scene from Caddyshack again, where it's just grass. It's manatee poop. And when you see those poops out there, yeah, yeah. All right, here we go. Okay, so Rumya, you want to share a little bit of this, or? So what can we do to help? What do you do? What do you do already? What can you do better? What did you not even know that you can do? I'm new. 10 years ago or less, I was buying Solo cups and when there was a hurricane, I was going to the store and buying 50 cases of water, that I never even used. So there's a lot of things that we can do.
Yeah, so obviously just using less plastic. It's, there's a lot of things that we can cut out of our life that are plastic and unnecessary. One thing to keep in mind is that plastic is made from fossil fuels. So that's just another bonus. You're not just reducing the amount of trash that you find everywhere, but you're also reducing your carbon footprint. And I think I probably say that in several different ways, just use less plastic. But that's really the biggest thing, is just reducing the amount of plastic that we use. Aside from reducing, reusing and recycling things as much as possible is really helpful. There's always different initiatives that are looking at creating biodegradable types of plastic or plastic substitutes, or recyclable things that, different types of packaging. And so, trying and that this can get expensive, so obviously that can be prohibitive. But just looking into what you can do, at least doing a little bit of research it's always helpful. Cooking more at home and eating less Uber Eats. I am guilty of this. I am lazy. I love to cook, but also it takes forever. But they always bring you your food in plastic containers and plastic bags, and not to mention all the them driving everywhere. It's just better. And, just in general, I'm definitely one of those people that always has good intentions of cooking at home, and I'll buy a bunch of food, and then I don't use it, and it goes bad, and which is just as terrible. So, I'm working on that, and I think that that's something that, is just to keep in mind. Again, buying sustainable products and avoiding single-use products. And this doesn't just apply to plastic. There are a lot of things that you can buy that are single-use that are not plastic. But again, those types of things, they become unsustainable. And, just be aware of the waste that you produce and where it's going. We do these cleanups, and most of that waste ends up going into the landfill, which is unfortunate, but hopefully it'll stay there and not end up back in the water. But, just being, you meet people on the street that are just like, they'll unwrap like a candy bar or something and just like let go of it because they're like, oh, it's little and it doesn't matter. That matters. That, that could go choke a turtle later because it gets blown around and then out into the water or whatever it is, but like just being aware of what happens to your waste and where it goes. Being aware of what should be recycled and what can't be recycled. So putting stuff that's not recyclable in the recycling, we call that wish cycling, because you're like hoping like, well, if I put it there, maybe they'll recycle it. And unfortunately they don't. They'll just throw out the entire thing into the trash, and then all the stuff that was recyclable has now just been thrown in the trash. So, it's just kind of being a little bit more aware. And then of course talking to everybody around you and just making them aware of what the situation is, how to make it better, whatever, what everybody can do. And, always be aware of the bigger picture. We're not just doing this because we want to reduce our trash and make ourselves more sustainable. We're looking at the greater environment, the greater ecosystem, the world. All of what we're doing will ultimately affect everybody else around us and everything around us, and the animals and the environment. So always keep in mind that there is a bigger purpose to this. It's not just, to make yourself feel good, which hopefully it does, but also you're doing this for everybody and everything around you. And that's it. Questions? Yes.
Question in the chat. They want to know about the Bill Bags clean lunch and read.
Oh, great. So the question is regarding our 5th find cleanup, which is scheduled for January 14th at Bill Bags. We haven't announced it yet, but we will post it on Philabag. Follow Philabag on Instagram or the Citizen Scientist Project. And it is going to be it's going to be a paddle or walking cleanup. So it's going to be a hybrid cleanup, something for everyone. It's going to be the final one. We're going to most likely be meeting by the No Name Harbor, right there at the edge of No Name Harbor by the Boater's Grill restaurant. If you're on the chat and you're familiar with, or if you're in the on Zoom and you're familiar with that, give a thumbs up. We'll be launching right there in No Name Harbor in that little corner where the mangrove meets the seawall. We'll launch our paddle boards there and work those mangroves along the perimeter of No Name Harbor out into the bay, and then work that breakwater out in front. The breakwater on the west perimeter of Bill Bag State Park? You know who cleans the breakwater? Nobody. The tides. The tides bring it in, deposit it there, and maybe wash it out or not, but a lot of stuff gets in there. We'll also on the other side of the perimeter of the mangroves, there's a walking trail there at Bill Bags. You may have walked that trail all the way out to the seawall and the breakwater, so people will be walking that and cleaning that as well. I hope I answered your question. The meetup time has not been determined yet. We're going to look at the tides. We always look at the tides. Typically, we like to do the cleanups early because of the heat, although in January we might get a bit of a break on that. So we're going to look and really base it on the tides on the 14th of January.
We are also hoping to have kind of a small party afterwards to celebrate our accomplishments for our 5 cleanups. We want to make this an annual event, so we're hoping that we'll get another grant from Find and we can do another 5 cleanups next year and just keep it up. And we'll have hopefully a few other organizations involved in the sort of party aspect of it. That we'll have some like merchandise that people can have and just kind of have a good time, and again do some education about the environment and why we're doing this and what good
If you go up one slide, I think I love the logo that they created for this Find tour or Find grant. Up here, look how, isn't that pretty? That mangrove and water, logo. Love that. So we're going to create T-shirts with that logo, and then we're going to make it like a concert shirt, right? So it's the Find tour, and then all the dates and the locations from each one, and so people can take pride in what they've done and help them raise awareness and have it be a conversation piece and something that they can, become part of and hopefully iterate within their own creativity to what what it'll be.
About mangroves, I go to a stream every day and I see a lot of mangrove seeds floating.
Yes.
But I always wonder where they come from. Are they local or they come from because they're plastic or because I see a lot of the wood that always been that get washed out. That always been for some time and what is because they cover with water. So
Yeah, I mean, there's mangroves, outside of Key Biscayne, there's a lot of mangroves right across the bay, almost the entire bay side, all the way down into Palmetto Bay.
the Atlantic side of the Key Biscayne, where they come from.
On the bay side also, there's a lot of mangroves. In Coconut Grove, there's a lot of mangroves. In Coral Gables, there by the waterfront, there's a lot of mangroves. Further down, Palmetto Bay, tons. Those are all mangroves there. The little barrier islands outside, Elliott and Ragged, those are all surrounded by mangroves, and also throughout Cuba and Central America. And
How long can they float in water like that?
It varies from one type to another, but it's unlikely that the ones you see here are going to be coming from the Caribbean. It's possible, but they'll be pretty degraded by then. They stay in the water. They can stay in the water for several weeks, but not much longer than that. They just become unviable. They won't be green anymore, and they'll start falling apart. So pretty much all the ones that you're seeing around here are local, including the ones on the Atlantic side. Even though there may not be mangroves, they're washout from the bay.
If you ever
either
paddle-
Bear Cut or somewhere north.
from the videos that Rumya shared some videos through those mangrove channels, if you look closely when you're back there, you'll see the seeds hanging. It looks like it's really remarkable, right? They're hanging all over, and you don't realize it. And if you're paddling and by chance you touch a tree or something, you see that they drop, and they're perfectly designed like torpedoes to get down there and reach that low ground.
And they're made to float vertically, so that the part where the leaves grow out of is always sticking up out of the water.
So they're not really designed to float around. They're designed to fall and get stuck in it.
No, they're designed to float around. That's how they will populate other areas or extend their population outwards or whatever it is. But that's why they can last for several weeks. So the water can move them quite great distances in several weeks.
So the ones that float around, they may still germinate, right?
It's possible, yeah. It depends where they land. And it depends, the reason you don't see a lot happening on the Atlantic side has a lot to do with the tides there, the ocean water and there's just a lot of reasons that they just don't really tend to populate the Atlantic side. So
It's
much
mostly
as the
beach
Bay side.
too, right?
Yeah, it's mostly beach. They can grow in beach, but they don't prefer it. Whereas the other side of Key Biscayne is just more appropriate for them. It's kind of easier for them to germinate there. But yeah, a lot of them will float around either until they wash up and just die, or until they find a place to germinate.
All right, well, thanks everybody. Appreciate you sticking around.